Hey guys, it is November 5th, 2017, and this is your episode 120 of Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Cangelosi, and with me as usual are Laurel Black.
Hi.
And Ben Charles. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing well. I think that of all of the hosts here, I think I win the most for Bring Your Teacher to Work Day.
You've brought, this will be all the UNT professors. We just got to get Mr. Dean on, and we'll have had, I guess we have to get Ed Soph on, but...
Well, both of those guys would be good choices, I think. Yeah.
Yep. We'll get to it. Yeah, no, you're definitely winning. I think I'm losing for sure. I don't think I haven't had one quite yet. Hey, also in the room is Kaipo Lon.
Hello.
So Kaipo is a student of mine now, but he was a student of Mark's, did his master's degree there. And of course, our guest today, you guys, is the coordinator of percussion at the University of North Texas. He's a composer and world-touring percussionist slash marimba virtuoso. His CDs are titled Stealing a Moment, Motion Beyond, and the CD that was my childhood sweetheart, no, not childhood, my high school sweetheart for sure, is Polaris. I listened to Polaris, the whole CD, back to front, back and forth, over and over and over. I just knew that CD as well as any other marimba solo CD out there. I mentioned Koshka's Marimba Spiritual CD, and that one I have to admit came first, but man, after that it was like Mark Ford's Polaris was just over and over and over. He's also a past president of the Percussive Arts Society as well as the artistic director for the annual Drumfest Marimba / vibraphone competition in Opola. Did I say that right?
Opole?
Opole, Poland. Thank you, Kai.
And
so,
also, one time he fixed my garbage disposal with a marimba bar.
Okay, we got to hear about that for sure.
That is true,
That's about
actually.
the story. Yeah, that's about the whole story.
Well, I didn't know marimba bars were allowed to be used for that, but that's very cool. And
Very versatile application.
So, guys, hey, this is Mark Ford.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me here. Wow, 120 editions of this. That's really outstanding, guys. I mean, I've heard several of them, not 120 of them. I wish I'd had the time to listen to them all, but I do keep in touch with what you're doing. And wow, it's such a service and such a opportunity to share information. So thank you guys for everything you do.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you're very welcome. And thanks so much for joining us. And yeah, wouldn't be complete without you for sure. What's on your plate these days? I heard you just came from a recital with Greg Bissonette?
Right.
Recital.
Well, Greg Bissonette was in town, and he's been playing with Ringo Starr for the last dozen years or so. And so he and I went to school together, and we're good friends. And so we went up to see him play and get a chance to hang out with him and watch the show. And it was perfect, really great show. If you get a chance to see him, you might think, well, it's just Ringo tunes, but it's actually a wide variety of classic rock and roll type music with some really outstanding performers. So highly recommended for a night off. Yeah.
I saw a great Greg Bissonette clinic, and he talked so much about Ringo Starr, and because when you're the age I was seeing this, I just wanted to see people blow crazy licks and play really fast, and I was really young, and man, but that clinic was so good to hear because he explained so many nuances about Ringo Starr and, just exactly what a lot of young people don't know,
When I was Percussive Arts Society president, his name came up regarding a Hall of Fame. And I thought, what drummer is better known nowadays than Ringo? Probably there's no one. And reason being, his influence on my generation of drummers was huge. And we really didn't have that type of star right before him, especially one that was marketed like the Beatles were in that time. And I was a young boy, but I had a sister who was 5 years older who was definitely into the Beatles. And when they came on Ed Sullivan, you could feel the excitement. And I just remember saying, I want to do that. I want to be part of, playing drums like that. So it was, and Greg will tell you the same story. He had the same influence and probably many, many other drummers, and again, in our age group.
I had a question, Mark. I know just like a week or two ago, you were in Poland doing this Drumfest thing. Could you tell us about your activities over there?
Well,
I hear you played a concerto too.
Yeah, it was by this rather, obscure composer named Casey Kangley something. No.
Yeah, how do you say that guy's name?
How do you say that guy's name?
No one knows.
No, Casey, your composition went over very well. It was the second marimba concerto. I did because of time constraints, I had to choose two movements. So we did the second and third movements on that concert. Great. And it's quite a challenging piece, my friend. And second movement is haunting. And the third movement is just, wow. I thought my left hand was pretty okay, but I learned that I need to work on my left hand.
Man, it's so great you played it. Thanks so much for bringing it to Poland. And yeah, having someone like you anywhere close to it is just an honor. So thanks so much for doing it.
I learned a lot. I hadn't really had a chance to dig in to play some of your music. I've coached a lot of your music, but not a chance to perform it. And so when this opportunity came up, it's kind of a long story, but there was a concerto I was going to play, but they had problems getting the parts, so I needed to change kind of quickly. So around the 1st of September, I contacted you and jumped on the board of playing your music. And so I had maybe 5 or 6 weeks to put that together and go and perform it. But also on that concert was Eric Sammutt and Ludwig Albert. Really an amazing concert. Ludwig also performed with Rodrigo Marquez from Portugal. And we just had a really, and Ney Rosario from Brazil, of course, was there. So we had quite a crew. Both performing with the orchestra, judging the competitions, giving clinics. And it's quite a busy week, but really worthwhile. And while the weather there this time was gorgeous, just beautiful fall weather. So we really had a great visit.
Well, since we were just talking about everything you've been doing, kind of traveling around performing, we have a question from Naoko Takada. And she says, how do you manage everything, your family, teaching, composing? I'm completely amazed at how much you're able to do.
Hi, Naoko.
Yeah, hi, Naoko.
Hi, thank you. Yeah. Well, she has little ones too at home, and she probably knows exactly the challenges. But really, for me, the family comes first, and I feel like that I have a beautiful 2-year-old daughter at home, Emily, who's really such a joy. And anybody that's lived with young children knows the schedules can be kind of crazy. And so really I try to put them first. And it's being the beauty of teaching college too, is that your schedule can be somewhat flexible. And I try to make that work. And some of the compositions that have been going on right now have been around Emily too. So I have a new marimba songbook that'll come out by the 1st of January. That's actually lullabies and songs that myself and my wife Evelina have written, and then I've arranged them for different instruments. But this is actually the marimba versions, all solo. So it's kind of like my earlier method book, but it's not really a method. This is just a collection of songs. So I try to connect the dots when it comes to that. And when North Texas is in session, I always have a joke about the circus is in town, because there's just so much activity here, and I try my best to help everyone be the best that they can be here. And clearly there's no way that one person could do everything. And so I enjoy learning from all the amazing faculty and students here as well, and trying to juggle that a little bit, but at the same time try to keep my feet on the ground and try to keep things going. And as a player, you just have to make sacrifices that I'm going to spend this time now to be playing. I can't compose when I'm really trying to play. So I'm either playing or composing, very rarely trying to do both at the same time, and work in North Texas and of course take care of family. So I try to pick and choose.
To our maybe younger listeners that don't know, University of North Texas has a massive percussion program. How many people there? Well, you were there, Kai. How many percussion majors?
110.
110. What about you, Ben? Probably about the same?
I want to say it was even more than that. I thought it was like 130, but I could be wrong.
I was going to say, I've heard it be more before. So This isn't just like, and I have my job.
Part of it, Part of it might be sometimes, I think sometimes they include the jazz majors in that number and sometimes they don't, so maybe that has to do
I
with
see.
But
Yeah,
I know
we hover between, 115, 135 or so, and there's 18 of us teaching percussion right now. So it's like a little village of drummers.
Yeah,
And
I remember I auditioned at Indiana University for a DMA, and they had like the little meeting at the beginning with Tafoya, and Tafoya gets up there and he's talking. He's like, we have about 70 to 80 percussion students, so it's very large. I was like, you have no idea.
Well, Kai came here from UNT and he said, "Oh, how many majors?" And I said, "Oh, like 20." He was like, "What? Does anybody even want to study with you? 20?" It's like, what is that? Just kidding. He did not. No, he didn't say that.
That's a normal studio.
But,
yeah, this is really, it's just a really unusual place, really.
Yeah.
Thing. So.
Well, coming up, my teacher, the same teacher that brought me to the Utah Day of Percussion every year, Dennis Griffin, I've mentioned on the show many times, and really I laid eyes on Mark Ford the first time ever. You played a recital. I think this one was either at Weber State or BYU. That's usually where they were. It was one of those. But heard you play a solo recital, got the CD, and then I was hooked. And let's see, where was I going with that? Oh yeah, he always talked about UNT. That's like the percussion program you want to get to. And so we're telling everyone, oh yeah, the program's really big, but I just feel I should probably add it's also really, really good. I mean, you guys have a history. When I hear about DMA students who get jobs, there seems like there's a small handful of schools that you always hear, and UNT is definitely one of them. Of course, Ben's an example. He's sitting there with a college professorship, and he has a degree from UNT. Is that, I don't know I don't know how to turn that into a question, but obviously you do something really well. And is that something you practice with your students? Like, is aiming for the job something that you go for?
Aiming for the job, you mean after graduation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess of course the answer is yes, but maybe, what is it that you're doing so right?
I think Casey's asking, how do you put your students in a position to get that job after they graduate?
I feel like it's our job to create an atmosphere, to create the opportunities for those students to grow, because they will do things that I really can't anticipate, and we'll charge them with the basics and the fundamentals, and we want to make sure that they sound great and have good interpretive skills. But wow, what they do with that, some of the students here, your jaw will drop on the ground, and others you have to work on and help them out, of course. So, but you're trying to create an environment where they can grow without somebody saying, no. We're trying not to be that way. We're trying to be open. And so I think that leads to strong creative school skills and opportunities, and they network. And because we're so large, they have a lot of really great comrades to network with. So they'll use their friends in their classes or the graduate students and make connections. And I think they learn how to network here really well. So I think that's part of it. And I know that myself and all the other professors, we tend to make phone calls and write letters and write emails and try to promote our students because we believe in them. And we feel like it's part of our charge.
Yeah, great.
I was going to ask you, Mark, how many letters of recommendation do you write every year?
A lot.
A lot. Or do you
I'm on a one
dear
every
so-and-so,
6 months.
just call me.
No, I have this folder that I started years ago when I was in East Carolina, and it would be like student recommendations. And of course, the Mac will alphabetize it, of course, and so it starts off with a dozen letters or so. And whenever I write a letter, I just drag it into that folder just to think someday I might need it again. Or, some students will apply for more than one job, and I can just fix it and send it out again, of course. But it's really full right now. So
sure,
it's pretty long. I don't know the number, Laura, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
My pleasure, but it's a lot.
I will say also, I think a concern a lot of people have about North Texas is because there are so many students, they think it'll be really cutthroat and competitive. And it is competitive, but I never felt like someone would break my mallets if I left them in the practice room or anything like that. It always felt very supportive, and I think Mark already sort of hit on this, but for me, one of the best things was getting to see so many different approaches from different students, and they have a departmental recital every single week. And at the end of the semester, it's always super long, but it was always fun to get to see the Hiromis and the Norikos, the Japanese marimba girls that can seriously play, and just being this 18-year-old kid looking at them going, that's what I want to do one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great sharing. And we bring in guest artists. Like last week, we had Brian Jones from the Dallas Symphony Orchestra do a timpani clinic. And wow, it was outstanding. And, we mix it up. It could be a drum set person or a hand drummer or a marimbist or vibist. And try not to think we have a formula, that kind of thing. Just try to keep our eyes open to talent, young or old, to try to bring in and help the students.
So on that note, I feel like a broken record because I ask this question every time it's applicable, which it is today. My favorite guest artist when I was at North Texas, by far, was Keiko Abe. And whenever we have a guest that has worked with Keiko Abe, I always say, can you please tell us about your experience working with Keiko Abe?
Okay. Wow. I've known Keiko. It's kind of funny because back in the day before the emails and the internet, I would write her letters because I was working in North Carolina. And she came to do a PASIC, I want to say like in 2000 in Dallas. And I was talking with her and I said, I would love for her to come to North Texas to do a concert and a recital. And at this time, it was one of these deals where it was just 3 days, but she goes, I know you've been writing me letters and I would love to come. So she came and we did a concert together and I conducted her an ensemble of her works and she did some solos, but she was only here for maybe 2 days and left, So I wrote her back and said, that wasn't enough. I said, why don't you come back and we'll play with our Wind Symphony, which directed by Eugene Corporon, which is outstanding group. And you can stay longer, stay 10 days, stay a couple of weeks. And so anyway, we worked it out and she was going to come. And this is one of my favorite stories with her. I was in Indianapolis at maybe Bands of America doing a clinic or something, and I had to fly in. She actually got here before I did. I had a student pick her up, got her to the hotel, and I called her. I got to the airport and I called her and said, hey, I'm in town now. Can I pick you up for some lunch or dinner? And she said, sure. So we came, we had a little lunch. And then she said, why don't we go to school and practice? And I hadn't played in 2 or 3 days because I had been, and I was like, I was thinking this afternoon I might get a chance to just run through the piece because we were premiering her Prism Rhapsody 2 for Wind Symphony. And so anyway, she said, give me 20 minutes. So I went down to my office, took out my mallets, and nothing felt right. Nothing felt good, and I was like, oh boy, this is Keiko Abe's down the hallway and this isn't going to go so well. So I rolled, got my stuff down there. We rolled the the marimbas in a V, and I'm thinking, okay, here we go. I'm going to do my best. And then she said, before we start, I have to tell you something. And I said, well, what's that, Keiko? And she says, I'm very nervous. And I went, me too. But once she said that, it was fine, and we kind of relaxed, and we just got into it, and it was a lot of fun. But I forget walking down that hallway going, oh man, this is not going to be a good rehearsal, but it turned out to be beautiful. So she's been here several times since, and probably the time, Ben, you remember was maybe in 2006.
Yeah, you played, the Wind Ensemble did 4 percussion concertos, and I think Mark played 3 of them from memory. It was something else.
We did that. Wow. We did that Prism Rhapsody. She did several pieces solo with recorded accompaniment, improvisations, and then we did the Bill Kraft's Concerto for 4 Percussionists, and we did the
Russell Peck,
Rory and the Grandeur. It's exactly right, and that was really, really awesome.
Yeah, and we also
had here with us too.
Yeah, Bill she also had her big marimba ensembles, a bunch of students from Japan.
Right.
Yeah. Was that concert done at PASIC also?
Yeah, we did. We did that on an evening concert at PASIC in 2006, I believe. Yeah. And I know that they're interested in trying to bring her back next year for PASIC. And so we've she and I, we've just been emailing a little bit. We don't see each other very often. Last time I saw her was she came to Poland in 2014, and we played another concerto of hers together. And I was in Japan but it's been like 3 years or something. But anyway, we've been talking about the possibility of her coming here first, getting over the jet lag, doing a clinic and a performance here with her students, and then going to Indy. But I'm hoping that works out. She's over 80 now, and she's amazing. She's absolutely everything that everybody says to me. I love listening to her play, and I love listening to her talk about music. Her passion and her sensitivity is just infectious. I've seen people just break down crying in the clinics just because of the things she says and the way she plays. It's so touching.
Yeah.
Is it? Wow. Is it the? I mean, I'm sure must be some of both. Is it how she thinks about music specifically, or her ability to describe it?
I think Keiko and the marimba are one. And and she feels nature and her life and living and being expressive. It's just like it's just one voice. And so when she has a really soft-spoken voice in English, and I think when she describes it, she's very honest in her descriptions. And I think it's just she's very expressive in how she communicates to the students that she's working with, and really hits right to the true point of why you're trying to play the marimba. It's not to play the right permutation or the right note on the right beat, but to create a sense of expression and mood and character in each piece. And that's what she does so well in her teaching.
It reminds me of what Nani Mamura said on our podcast. If you all want to go revisit that episode, but I asked her to share some of her clinic. And yeah, very philosophical. It's playing is a deep philosophical thing. Mm-hmm. And Nana was saying that's a Japanese thing. It's
that may be true. I mean, I think that's true for all of us that play. We have a spiritual connection with our instruments. I think that's what brings us to our art form. But with Keiko and maybe with Nana's, it's just this organic connection with art and nature that they seem to bring to life so well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that echoes a lot of what Michael Rosen said about working with Keiko Abe. And I know when I was a student in the master class, it was funny because there was like I think a master class sign-up sheet, and I signed up, but I was like a sophomore and playing Memory of this, what's the one, the Seashore one? Memories of the Seashore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess it was Mark, whoever, had this list, basically put it in priority order of, DMA student, master student, and then the undergrads. And I was like the sixth alternate to play in the class or something like that. So I was like, there's just no way I'm going to get picked for this. And
so you didn't practice.
And then, well, I didn't dress up, I know. And then Keiko walks in and she says, well, I want to hear the people that are playing my compositions first. And so then that bumped me up to like second place. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm playing today.
So warmed up, huh?
So so I got to play for her, but it was so cool because she's not, and I think part of it is probably just her English isn't, spectacular, but she's not one that talks a lot about how to play. She plays. And so I remember I walked up and I started playing for her, and I heard this noise, and I kind of, I didn't want to lose my place in my playing, but I kind of, what is that? And I looked up and she was improvising on top of me. And of course, 19 years old, you're like, oh my God, Keiko Abe's improvising on top of me playing. Don't screw up. But yeah, it was such a cool experience.
So now on your resume, you've performed with Keiko
Right,
Abe.
exactly, yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. On top of everything. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ben, I think you're going to tell us about another famous marimbist, right? Do I have that right?
Yes, and actually this was the first marimba guest artist that we had when I was at UNT, and Mark just spent some time with him in Poland, so I figured it'd be a good time to talk about Mr. Eric Sammutt. Mr. Sammutt was born in Toulouse, France on February 20th, 1968, and he said he was fascinated by drums at a jazz concert at a young age, and he said it was kind of funny. He said, I wanted to play drums after watching that concert, but I guess I ended up only playing classical percussion. So he grew up, studying music. And in 1989, he graduated with honors from the National Conservatory of Music in Lyon, France. At the National Conservatory, he studied with, and pardon my French pronunciation here, Francois Dupin, who was responsible for bringing the Stevens technique to France. Upon his graduation, he became the principal percussionist and assistant timpanist of the Opera de Lyon. And then in 1998, later on, he became the first timpanist of the Paris Orchestra, which I believe is still the position that he has today. After graduating, he said, I think it was around 1990 to 1994, he started playing jazz piano and mostly forgot about the marimba. And then his teacher, who had brought the Stevens technique to France, passed away in 1994, and he said he saw a poster for the first ever International Lee Howard Stevens Marimba competition, and it was dedicated to two people, one of which were his teacher. So he decided to enter in honor of his teacher. And the competitors for that competition included, and there were many more than just this, but included Tom Burrett, Pedro Carneiro, Momoko Kamiya, and Shi-Iwu. Shi-Iwu took third place that year in 1995, and Eric Sammutt won first place. As part of his prize, he got a Malatek 5.0 Imperial Grand Marimba, $1,000 of music and mallets from Malatek, and an opportunity to perform at PASIC. And he did perform at PASIC in 1996. Because of that competition. From what I can tell, in that competition, he performed Gordon Stout's Two Mexican Dances, Musser's Etude in C, Reflections on the Nature of Water, Time, some Bach, I'm not sure what Bach, a piece called One Exciting Dance by his teacher, and the first two rotations, which he composed specifically for that concert. In 1996, he won second prize at the World Marimba Competition in Stuttgart, Germany, and he was beaten by one Kashka. She got first place that year. And there's a quote from 1996 before the PASIC concert from Gordon Stout, and I love this. In 1996, Gordon Stout said, Eric Sammutt is a consummate marimbist and musician who displays the utmost in technical and sonic virtuosity. His new and exciting compositions are destined to become standard repertoire for all marimbists, which Mr. Stout's prophecy, I think, has become true. He's recorded 3 albums called Four Mallet Ballet, Mirages, and Sailing in Soul. He has a signature line of mallets from Malatek, and he's published over 25 compositions, some of which are completely original and some of which are his sort of marimba take on famous tunes, from a lot of them from operas. These compositions include his 4 rotations, Libertango, which is probably his most commonly known piece, Chameleon, and my favorite, which is a little less known, called Mirages. And Mark, I know you just spent some time with Eric in Poland, so could you tell us about getting to work with Eric?
Okay, well, first off, Eric is an amazing musician, really, and he got that job at the Paris Orchestra when he was 20 years old. I mean, really has had quite a career with the orchestra. And if it wasn't for his marimba playing, I mean, he would already be a major musician, musical voice there in Paris. But because of his marimba playing and his compositions and arrangements, he's really, gone well beyond France, as you guys know. He's a joy. He's a joy to work with. He's so easy, so relaxed, and so open to hearing new music and new ideas. I spoke with him a little bit and did a short little interview with him on my YouTube channel, talking about his compositional style. And I asked him, I said, how do you just start a piece? How do you get things going? And he basically improvises it and performs it 2 or 3 times, and then he writes everything down. He doesn't write out notes beforehand. But I found with him a very giving spirit as long as I've known Eric. And talking with the students over there, I had 6 UNT students with me this year in Poland for the festival, and they were asking him all great questions. And he stood there for several hours talking and just wanting to share with them and hear about what they're doing in musical experiences. It's just really, really a great person to be around and beyond his music, really.
I remember the first time I got to hear him live, I believe, was at Fernando Meza's 2010 big marimba festival that we've talked about several times on the show. I think it was there. And I remember on the program he was doing his variations on Porgy and Bess, and I thought to myself, okay, well, I know he's a really good player, but, how cool could that really be? How interesting could that possibly be? And I kind of had low expectations like an idiot, and
Answer,
it was just
very
amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the answer, way cool, like way cooler than I could have thought.
You're talking about because he's playing transcriptions? What?
Well, it was his piece, Variations on Porgy and Bess.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, right. I see what you're saying. Why did I think it would? Yeah. Why did I not expect so much? I don't know. I guess because I thought, oh, it's this opera going all the way down to marimba, and
I think a lot of us think like, oh, well, I know the lick. It's just going to be the lick. And it's
right,
so
and I
much
probably
more than
couldn't.
that. Yeah.
And that's probably what I was thinking too. Like, oh, okay, so the whole game is going to be, look where I can fit what I can fit the excerpt into, and look what I can fit around it. But it just wasn't like that at all. It was just totally brilliant. It was just gorgeous.
Take the essential elements of those compositions and create something new. Really, even though you still recognize obviously the melody, but the meter could change or the harmony can be adjusted. Mm-hmm. I have a funny story that Eric came here. I don't remember the year, maybe
2005.
5?
Yeah, it's when I was there. Yeah.
Anyway, we had a group of with him, an ensemble that was going to play at Pasek. And so he performed here, and we got a chance to hang out for several days. And then we went down to Pasek, and I was going to go, to be there and supporting there and hear it again. And on the way there, I ran into Vida Chenoweth, and Vida said, hi, Mark, where are you going? I said, I'm going to hear Eric Sammutt. She goes, me too. So we got in there. We were kind of not late, but we were like right at the minute. So we had to sit back in the back, and we got to a seat. And she goes, all the programs are gone. And I said, well, he played at North Texas. I know what he's playing. And she said, well, what's he doing? I said, well, the whole program is basically transcriptions with the ensemble. She said, transcriptions? I don't want to hear any transcriptions. And I said, you should listen. I said, he's really awesome. She goes, no, I did transcriptions 50 years ago. We're out of here. Let's go. It's like, okay. So we stepped outside and we talked for a little bit. She just had a really, just really bad taste for transcriptions. I said, but sure. This is not like just a transcription. This is a composition based on, I was trying to, we're talking to her now, but.
Yeah.
On that note, I thought Mark was going to go here with that. I remember that concert now, and I remember Mark was saying he does such a good job at sort of like pulling elements and then, making it his own thing. And one of the pieces they did, I think it was the big piece, was The Four Seasons by Vivaldi. And in the middle of the piece, it goes into We Will Rock You by Queen. It goes into boom, boom, crack. And I remember after the concert, I asked someone, I was like, was that actually, because I was 18 at the time, I was like, was that actually in Vivaldi's Four Seasons? They're like, no, of course not.
Nice, of course.
You're familiar with that version, apparently.
Yeah. I can't remember which album it's on, but I really love his, I think it's a trio of Edith Piaf songs.
Four Mount Ballet, yeah.
Yeah, they're just lovely. I really like those a lot.
Yeah, no, it is such a cool lesson. Back to my experience about expecting one thing and just getting the world different. And oh man, I mean, just being so floored. It just, I don't know. There's a lesson there. It's hard to put into words, but it was a good one for me. Let's see. I think Kai, you're going to move us to a little something else with a question.
So speaking to the connection with different musicians from around the world. I remember when I was in Professor Ford percussion literature class, he shared with us his early career in PAS and how he get to connect with different musicians because of his something he did, and I think it's worthy to share with everyone your experience with that.
With PAS, wow, this could be a really long answer, but I'll try to get to the most important elements. When I was a new teacher in Tennessee, teaching at Middle Tennessee State, I just knew that I just didn't know I didn't know enough to do my job, and I needed to explore. And there wasn't an internet. I couldn't go on the internet and just Google and email people. I had to write letters to people. And so I helped to revitalize the PAS chapter in Tennessee. We started to have events that would come together, and this sharing was something that really helped me, and it really helped all the students and all the other teachers as well. And so when I moved to North Carolina, I continued to do this, and really it was networking. Really, I was trying to help my students, help myself, and of course learn as much as I could. PAS, really, I didn't have an ambition to serve on the executive committee initially. I was doing committee work and, of course, composing and writing articles and things. And but I remember that Jim Campbell wrote me and asked me would I be interested in serving, and I said absolutely, I'd be honored. And so, really, I was on that committee for 8 years and served as president, and the experiences that I had during that time were immeasurable. Really can't explain to you how important that was and how much I learned, goodness, and how the opportunity was so precious to be able to help people in a position where across that board, and then to help build that organization even further. So it was a great honor, and I had my dear friends that I served with on that committee, and all the amazing people in PAS and area teachers that throughout the country and throughout the world really taught me so much. And so I think that's what Kai is referring to as this connectivity, and really not trying to, what's the right word? Not trying to be part of a team, to be part of something bigger than what we are as ourselves. That's what PAS can do for us, because most of us, as a percussion teacher, we're off in our own, Ben's by himself. You're teaching by yourself at your university. Casey, I know you have Laurel there, and I don't know about you've got some grad students, but most of us are one or two people. We really don't have a community that we can draw on, and that's what PAS does for us. And that's what we were trying to make as special as possible. And
it's funny. I couldn't agree more. And of course couldn't say it any better than that, obviously. I mean, that's, exactly how I feel about PAS. I think we all feel about PAS. It's so funny to me, every once in a while you hear about a little scrap or a little argument, or people get a little scrappy about things that happen at PAS. And I kind of want to say, okay, they might be right, you might be right. It's such a good thing, though, at large. It's just such a cool thing. And
It is, Casey, and it's a volunteer organization. I think maybe some people don't realize that no one's getting paid to do this work, and this is extra work. And volunteer work is where people get a chance to have an opinion. And to be honest, I learned so much that most people, we want to be heard. They don't necessarily want you to necessarily need you to act on their opinions, but they want to be heard. And of course, sometimes we would have to act on their opinions, but the most important thing was to have that open, transparent communication, which really felt everybody was engaged, everybody was involved, and to thank them for that. And it takes time to do that kind of work, but it's well worth the effort, paying back tenfold what you put in.
Well, thank you for doing it for us. And we all know that president is not easy, and you're the third PAS president we've had on the show, and we always
but he has the stars. No.
We always just say what a huge thanks and just what a big thing it is, because we know that's what a job,
Thank you, Casey. And they're doing great work now. The leadership now is doing awesome as well, and I feel like. They have so many resources now to draw upon, folks like myself who've served before, and also all the potential new leadership to develop new people to come into that organization to serve is a challenge and an opportunity for them, and they're doing it. It's really, really impressive.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's give Mark another quick little break. I have one of my weekly What's the Sounds, and instead of giving you guys a hint this week, I thought
Casey,
I would tell you what it is. Oh, sorry, Ben?
We need some game show music for this thing now.
I know. The editor needs to get on it. That's what I think. The editor is not creative enough. There needs to be way more flashy inserts in these episodes. But instead of giving you the hint, well, I did give you the hint already. It was sound from space. But I want you to imagine what you think two black holes colliding will sound like, and then I'll show you what they do actually sound like. So here you go. That's it. That's literally it.
Luke, I am your father.
Next composition we see is this.
It could be. It certainly could be. I have used space sounds before in compositions. My piece called Bad Touch is full of space sounds that NASA has captured and radio telescopes have captured and things. It's thematic to that. But yeah, pretty undramatic, underwhelming sound. And that is, let's see, this is a computer sound rendering of a large gravitational wave detection that happened last year on February 11th. I caught this on Facebook or something. I thought, oh, cool, it's so recent, and that'd be really fun to report on the podcast. No, it's a whole year old, or well over a year old now. But yeah, a gravitational wave detection. This particular detection was from two black holes converging into one. So, okay, how do we actually detect this? And what you heard were these couple of sound spikes. Twice it was low, and then twice it was high. And apparently they are captured at the lower frequency, which amazingly ends up in the hearable spectrum. And then they've cranked the pitch up a little bit just to make it a little easier to hear. So yeah, how in the world do they detect this? There's two facilities called LIGO detectors. LIGO stands for Laser Interferometer Gravitational Observatory. There's one in Louisiana and one in Washington State. So they're not exactly picking up sound, they're picking up gravitational waves. So this is kind of complicated, and that about ends what I actually understand, but I'll just tell you what I read. So you can imagine you got a building, and it's in the center of, say, two meeting lines of a L. So one goes up vertically, and another long hallway part of the structure goes to one side. So you got these two long hallways, basically. And the center piece in the facility has a laser going down each arm. And these are very, very long. They're 2.5 miles long. And at the other end is a mirror. So inside of these arms are lasers, and they're bouncing off the mirror, and they can judge how long it takes the laser to get from one point to the other and reflect off the mirror. So if a gravitational wave were to come by, supposedly space and time will be stretched, and we can't experience that. So for instance, this microphone's sitting right in front of me. If space were to be stretched, I wouldn't see the microphone move with it because I move with it as well. So there's no way to like actually perceive this, and it happens so small that it would be almost impossible anyway. So what it doesn't stretch though is light. So they can measure how fast light's moving, and if it is detected in a different distance, they know that a wave has passed by. And the fact that it happened at the same moment at the two different facilities, one in Louisiana and one in Washington State, they know that a gravitational wave actually passed by. So it was just fun, something I bumped into, and a little cool sound. There's really good explanations out there on YouTube. If you YouTube search gravitational waves hit the Late Show, there's a cool presentation where physicist Brian Greene gives this really cool demo, like on stage on the Late Show. And there's another one on YouTube. The American Museum of Natural History presents Jenna Levine giving this really great lecture about it, and that's where I kind of found all that stuff. So that's your What's the Sound this week.
Cool. So when two black holes collide, do they make one like supermassive black hole?
Yes.
Or something? Oh.
Casey, if two black holes collide and no one is there, though,
right?
Happen.
All that technology, they can't answer that. Guys, well, we do have one more good Facebook question here from Kohei Sakai. And the question is the typical question regarding your composition process.
It's changed. It really has changed for me. Why? Because recently, in the last several years, I've been writing for wind ensemble and orchestra. My use, by being at the opportunity to be in Poland every year, there's an orchestra that will play whatever I write. So it's really such a great challenge for me. So I've had two premieres over there in the last 5 years, and for me, it's not my first charge to be an orchestral writer. But I'm this last year in 2016, they premiered a new work called Przebudzenie, which is called The Awakening. That means the awakening in Polish, and it was their 25th year of the festival. Now, this is the largest percussion festival in Europe, and the fact that Poland went free in 1989. You can just do the math and realize that, wow, this is the 25th year in 2016 that the organizer, the host, Wojtek Lasek, started this just a year or two after Poland went free. So I thought that was pretty impressive. Now he has 5 stores, music stores over there, and he supports this festival that brings world-class musicians, throughout, not just in one city, throughout the whole, primarily the southern region, to Krakow, Katowice, Wrocław, and several other cities. So I wrote this fanfare for him to commemorate this 25th anniversary. And The Awakening is it opens with these antiphonal chimes. I took the tubes out of the standard set of rack of chimes and put them around the hall to imitate the cathedral bells that happen in Apollo, because when they go off, you can't talk to each other. It's so loud. And so, of course, I'm just mesmerized by the rhythms and the tone that's happening in these bells. So anyway, I'm getting back to my compositional process, but I was inspired by his energy and vision and just this atmosphere with these chimes. So came up with this Awakening Przebudzenie piece that's about 4.5 minutes. And we premiered it in 2016, the orchestral version. And I did this. I would normally sit down and at the marimba, typically, or piano, and come up with themes or ideas that I want to incorporate. And on this one, I did it all on the computer. I had never really composed that way before, just to put it on the computer. And I feel like it was a success. And I was commissioned to write a wind ensemble version, which was just premiered about 4 weeks ago at University of Texas at El Paso, with Brad Ginevro conducting. And they're recording it next weekend. So really what a wonderful opportunity for me to explore, because I got to go down there for the premiere and just because I'm living in this band world here that's so incredible. The Wind Symphony and symphonic bands here in North Texas are so amazing. So just to get a chance to kind of give back to that a little bit and try composing for it has been really, really interesting. My other work as my concerto, the Stubernic Fantasy, which I did an orchestral and wind ensemble version as well. So I have plans for a concerto. I'm inspired by Casey's concerto. I'm like, I'll write a concerto. So
you're like, man, if Casey can do it, anyone can do this. Look at this.
With an even harder left-hand part.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say about composing, and Casey, I know that, goodness, I mean, you could say everything I'm going to say right here, but for me, when I have the concept about how I want a piece to feel, that's how I want to start. I don't want to start with a motive or an idea, just a musical idea. I want to know the feeling of the piece. I want to know how it's going to make me feel when it's being played. What's the mood? What's the character of this music? And once I have that, then usually the notes and things just start to spill out. It doesn't mean that I don't go back and revise and change things, but it just makes it a lot easier. When I've had commissions or a deadline before, and I didn't have that I started off with a deadline, which I don't like. I found I struggled more. I struggled to try to make it. I was trying to force something to work. So really for me, I just wait until I have the feeling, and then I know that that's what it's going to be about. And I find that for me, it's more satisfying as a composer. And goodness, you know it is, Casey. And if anybody plays your music, it's always a blessing. So for me, guys, I wasn't a composer. I didn't have any training. I just started writing music for my students because I had low-level students in the beginning in my colleges, and I just wanted to write new music for them to help them. And I wrote this piece called Head Talk, and which I thought was super cute, and it really helped them with the dealing with rhythmic transposition and dealing with down the line things. And I wrote that piece, and I wrote the Stubernic piece, and I have these letters from publishers saying no one will ever play this music, because you have to be there to help them do it. And I was like, no. So I just started selling it on my own and giving it away. And, wow, Head Talk went thousands and thousands of performances because drummers love it because there's no gear. You just pick up your drum head and go, and so I don't know. That kind of gave me the inspiration to write more. So I'm always writing. Yeah.
I love how you said start with just the feeling. And that, to me, you said the feel of the whole piece, because we always say step back and think big picture. And, of course, immediately everyone's head goes to like, oh, the form and the large form and all these technical things. Like, yeah, sure, that, of course, that qualifies as a description of big picture. But the harder one to get to is what you said. I mean, just the more abstract big picture. And, that's really good. I take when I'm going to compose, or when you're probably going to compose too, Casey's like when instead of like jumping to the computer or to the paper to start writing or the instrument, usually if I'm taking a walk, I just start a feeling of like what it is I need to say in this piece, and then the notes come a lot easier. And like in this case with the Shed Budzenia, I could feel that cathedral. I could feel the environment. I could see Poland and how it's changed from communist rule to now Western in the last really almost 30 years. So it's really dramatic change. It's incredible. So, I mean, all of these feelings are like wrapped up in this fanfare to celebrate this gentleman's vision and hard work on this festival. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you got, Ben?
I have a Head Talk story, and I don't think Mark knows this one.
Uh-oh.
But I won't name any names, but I will say that this was one of my teachers that usually does not play from memory. And the percussion ensemble at this school, this was before I got there, went on a trip to Indonesia. And they decided to play, amongst other things, probably because of the gear requirement, they decided to play Head Talk. And my teacher was one of the people that played this with, I guess, 4 students. And from what I hear, the rehearsals, he kept on forgetting his part because he never memorizes music anymore. And in the middle of the performance, on one of the tosses, he tosses the head up, and it just goes like, across the stage. And this professor, who Mark probably knows who I'm referring to, gets up, goes over, grabs his head, and boogies on back to his spot. Which I would have loved to be a fly on the wall for that one.
Ben's a loose cannon on the podcast, if you can't tell.
I can tell that. That's I know. I'm sure there's a lot of crazy talk. That's what that is.
For those of you who might not know, and there probably aren't many who don't know, but Head Talk is a piece you play with these heads that have a solid rim around them, so there's tension, and then you can just play them in the air, and they sound like a drum, sort of like those racket drums. And it's such a popular piece. I believe Steve Weiss will sell you just a set of these heads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they even say like the Head Talk heads.
Yeah, he didn't talk to me about that, but that's no. I'm glad. In fact, Remo still makes those heads because they were making drum sets. In fact, I didn't write the piece for those heads in the beginning. It was just normal, like tom-tom heads and snare drum heads, but there was no pitch to it. And then Remo was putting out these pre-tuned heads. You can have a drum set and you never have to tune it. Just put the head on. It sounds great. And they actually did sound pretty good, but nobody got into it really. But I did. I think I kind of kept them in business with their pre-tuned heads. And so Remo for many years just kept making them for that piece. So, but anyway, it's a fun piece. But that started me. That's the first piece I ever wrote. So that gave me a chance to kind of, get into composition.
I had the low part. I had the big head.
Yeah.
Utah State. Yeah, it was a blast. We played it a lot. I feel like that was one we did on our concert, and we also did all around. And yeah, I feel like the orchestra was on tour, and we also like took that along with it, in the lobby maybe, or.
I think it hit a niche, because you could do that. You can have an orchestra, and then somebody could play Head Talk without having to move any gear, and boom, and it was short and sweet and funny, a little funny. So that was a good thing. Yeah.
Oh, it's totally funny. Yeah, and you see more of this now. I mean, there's just commissions for suitcase pieces.
Right.
You know, pieces that'll fit in a suitcase, or you just hear percussionists talking a little more like that, and I'm happy to hear it because I've always felt that, and you guys have heard me complain about that before, just how composers just often feel like, well, you know, it's if I wrote for 19 bass drums, you got to figure it out. You know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I wrote for huge gong that's the size of a building, yep, that's your job to figure that out. And I don't know. Yeah, it's asking a lot.
I have a funny. Can I tell a story?
Oh yeah.
Okay. This is my first time to go to Poland. Actually, the gentleman was inviting me, and he kept calling, and he would say, can you come to Drumfest and do a clinic and a concert? And I said, no, I can't. I'm busy. I'm doing this or that. And another year he invites me again. I'm sorry. Very kind of you to invite me, but can't come. The third year, this was in 2008, he says, are you ever going to come to Poland? And I was like, I think it will work this year. I'll come. He goes, well, if you come, you must play Stubernic. And I said, oh, I'll play Stubernic. That'll be fine. So get over there. They pick me up. They drive me in. It's about 11 o'clock at night. He sits down at a table. He wants to have dinner. And I'm tired. You know how that goes, international travel. And he goes, you're very famous in Poland. And I was like, I've never been in Poland. And he goes, well, people play your music all the time. And I know that my music's not sold in Poland. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe it's not me. He goes, well, yeah, we had a national Polish Independence Day, which is on November 11th. And we had to have composers that were just Polish, but the percussion people at my conservatory, we didn't have a piece. We wanted to play Stubernic, so we just changed your name. And you turned into a Polish composer, Marek Fortsky,
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, this is super cute. I mean, they're playing Stubernic, and it's awesome. And these people are so nice. And so the next day I go to the rehearsal, and the two players were exceptionally good. And they say, Professor Forady, because we know this piece really well, but we don't know this ending that you sent, because I sent the published music in front. And I went, what do you mean you don't know this ending? And they said, yeah, we play it off the manuscript. I'm like, what manuscript? And he said, I don't know. Somebody wrote it all down. And that's what everybody uses in Poland. And I'm like, really? I said, can you bring this manuscript to me? And they said, yeah, okay. So the next day they come in. And he said, here you go, Professor Ford, here's the manuscript. And I look at it, and it's my manuscript.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell did you get this? Because it's like the piece, it's not finished. It doesn't have the ending on it. And it's got notes to the side, like where to do and what to do where, like to play on the resonators or the end piece. I'm like, where did you get this? He says, my teacher gave it to me. I'm like, okay, who's your teacher? He told me his name and meant nothing to me. I'm like, well, I just don't understand how you could have gotten this manuscript. And he said, well, I said, tell me more about your teacher. And he said, well, he played in the Polish Radio National Orchestra. And I started having these, firing in the back of my head, like having this memory of like in 1987, the Polish National Radio Orchestra coming through tour of East Carolina University. I didn't go to the concert, but my comrade, Harold Jones, and former teacher went. He met a percussionist, walked over to the music building, and I was rehearsing Stubernic with some students to try to figure it out. I was kind of at that stage and we stopped, and he goes, he introduced me to him, and the man says, I must have this piece. I'm like, well, it's not finished. Yes, but I live behind the Iron Curtain. If you don't give it to me now, I will never get it. And I was like, okay. I mean, for me, Poland might have as well been, on the moon. Why not? So I wrote a few notes, copied, and said Godspeed. Had no idea that 20 some years later, this piece was going to call me back over there. And it's a beautiful story. So met my wife.
That's great.
Through this, I mean, it was a really amazing opportunity. And just like I said, it's a love story. And this piece was calling me. So, but it was so crazy when he said, we know this music, but we don't know this ending. I was like, what could you speak? So
what I'm hearing is you don't like people to buy your music. You just want people to photocopy it.
Listen, well, Ben, before you probably don't know this, but back in the days before the internet, where we could get music easily or to even purchase music was marketing different, we would have to sometimes we would borrow or barter between different teachers. Like, I have an arrangement of this piece. Can you? And I need the one that you have. And we would exchange arrangements and sometimes compositions too. It was pretty common because then we'd have to put it in the mail and wait, 5 or 6 days for it to show up. And we would always get after students not to copy their music, of course, because that's copyright laws, blah, blah, blah. But now that seems to be even looser, I guess, because you can copy paste so easily. Many composers now are just putting their music out on PDFs, and there's no paper at all. So, but back in those days, to copy a piece and give it to someone wasn't as crazy as it might seem nowadays. And really, I had no idea what that piece was going to do or be. And he seemed like such a nice person. I just wanted to give him the music. And so, yes, but no, please buy the music if you're listening to this. Yeah, but I see because I go to Poland now often and do clinics and concerts. Every now and then someone will walk up with a copy of my handwritten score and ask me to sign it, so I'll sign it. I don't say anything. I was like, okay, great. Because that story is beautiful for me now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's way cool. Yeah, wow. Yeah, you never know. That's great. Yeah, Ben, do you have a question there?
Yeah, so one thing that hasn't come up actually is that Mark and I are both from Richmond, Virginia. We're both from the same place. And before I think before I even knew who Mark was, I was in like high school all-district band, and our conductor was named Clyde Hughes. And I know that was a very significant person in your life that was Mark's high school band director. Could you tell us about what it was that was so special about Clyde Hughes that got you started off on music?
Wow, Clyde was in the service. This was back at the end of the Vietnam era, when I was in high school, and he came out of the service, got his first job teaching band in Henrico County outside of Richmond, Virginia at Hermitage High School. And I was a freshman in high school, and he had a big impact on me. I think when this is really not just about Clyde, but it's about really great teachers. And I think when we have people in our lives that give us an opportunity to make mistakes and to really be creative, we can grow a lot. And that's what Clyde did for me. And my parents divorced in my high school years, and he kind of turned out to be a surrogate dad, and to help me make choices about college, for example, or about music and lessons. And he was just one of these guys that gave everything to his students. And I think that there's so many of us out there in the music education world that do this. We don't do it for the money. In fact, especially back in those days, the pay was really not great, but it's about that satisfaction and love for music and teaching and belief in those kids. And he believed in me, and he made a big difference in my life. And he drove me to my first college audition at East Carolina, and he didn't clearly have to do that. That was about a 3-hour drive. And he helped me meet Harold Jones, and that changed my life for certain.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing how many students you meet and they're starting college, and why are you interested? What do you want to do with this? What's the plan? And almost always they mention their high school band experience and their band director and how influential they were and what a good person they were. So
there's somebody in their life, Casey, it could be the band director or it could be just percussion teacher or music teacher that just gave them that opportunity and challenged them, to be the best they can be and to open their eyes to what's possible. And we all need that in our lives at that time, especially, I think, because nowadays it seems like students have so many more distractions than we did. At least, I feel like electronically with the everything, everybody has a smartphone now, right? So everybody's connected, maybe a little too much sometimes. So I don't know. Those kinds of people really can kind of cut through the business and really get right down to what's most important.
Yeah, my band director was huge importance to me. His name was Dan Stoll in Logan, Utah, and yeah, amazing guy. Yeah. Laurel, who was yours?
I actually had 3 different band directors in 4 years in high school, so I don't have a lot of connection to them.
Was there a good one?
Yeah, there certainly was, but the person that really did a lot for me was my choir director. Her name's Becky Thomas.
That's right. You said, of course. Yeah, you said that. What about you, Kai?
I started percussion when I was 10 years old, and I keep studying with my professor, Robert Hall. I think some of you know he's a member of True Percussion, and I studied with him until
He has such an awesome spirit. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Robert's wonderful. Well, this episode comes out probably right around Thanksgiving, so good job, Ben. Nice work. Well, it's about time to wrap, but
before we do, can I tell you about a new project I have right now?
Oh yeah, please, definitely, of course.
Super exciting for me. In December at the Midwest Clinic, Eugene Corporon and GIA Publications are going to put out a new CD with the UNT Wind Symphony and with percussion concertos. It's the whole disc is wind symphony music with percussion, features percussion concertos, and I'm playing on all of these pieces. And it's with Keiko Abe and I are doing the Prism Rhapsody. We went back and took like the best of the last 19 years that we've done, and several of them that came out in the last 3 or 4 years. But it's got my Stubernic Fantasy on there. It's got the McCarthy Chamber Symphony No. 1. It's got the Jennifer Higdon Percussion Concerto. We did the band version of this, and it's got Yo Goto's Ruffles from Afar, which is a snare drum concerto. And it's super exciting because this collection of pieces and being able to, again, celebrate our work together, Eugene Corporon and myself here together at UNT, to put this disc together. And we wanted it to be different. And Eugene he's exceptional. I know you guys may be familiar with his work, but he has over 150 CDs that he has conducted on. And never once has he been had a picture of himself on the CD. And so we had an amazing graphic designer put together an incredible cover with I'm playing the marimba and he's conducting. And so the first time he saw it, he was like, I don't know if I like this or not. And I said, oh, yeah, it's going to be awesome. And I said, if anybody deserves to be on the cover of a CD, it's you, because he's so prolific. And but anyway, we're really excited about it. And just to have that CD come out now is really, really special for us.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for mentioning it. That's sounds great. It's coming out on what record label again? It's
GIA, and Naxos is going to be distributing the disc. And actually, the official release is in March 18, but they're doing a pre-release in December at Midwest Conference. And GIA is a educationally based publishing company for music and recordings. And Gene has done a lot of his recordings through GIA and Clavier, GIA, and through Naxos as well. So, and they're all, his works are quite popular. His recordings are quite popular. So it's a kind of a time-proven mechanism for getting this new music for Wind Symphony out there. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Ben, you're going to tell us, it's going to be old news by the time this podcast is released, but it wouldn't be right to not say a little something.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned on the podcast yet that Mitchell Peters passed away on October 28th, 2017, and I have his eulogy here. The first sentence is just kind of, if you don't know who Mitchell Peters is. Mitchell Peters, a prodigious composer, recording artist, music professor, and former principal timpanist and percussionist with the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra, died today in Encinitas at the age of 82. And it goes on to talk about him. But I think my favorite line of it is the very last line, and it says, in a letter to Mr. Peters, internationally recognized conductor Frederick Fennell wrote, I may make music long enough to run into a better percussionist than you, but I doubt it very much. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure you guys probably also, my first marimba piece was Yellow After the Rain, and I studied the Peters snare drum books and played C refractions. So, yeah.
Yep, thanks to Mitchell Peters, and we'll have to celebrate him sometime with one of Ben's historical segments.
He was a very special guy. I didn't get to know him very well, but I did several times. I had conversations with him, and the last one was a few years ago when I was writing Marimba Heritage, because I incorporated his Sonata Allegro and Yellow After the Rain into that piece. And he called me, and we talked, about the composition. So warm and giving, and so. yeah, any tributes to him are he's impacted pretty much everyone in this country that's ever played percussion for certain.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you guys, thank you so much for doing episode 120. And man, Mark Ford, so great to see you again.
Casey, thank you so much. Marlon, Kine, Ben, this is such an honor and privilege. And I look forward to seeing you soon, maybe at PASIC, right?
We're all going.
Yes.
Yeah, the whole batch will be there. So yeah, see you. Yeah, that's T- 2 days, you guys. So yeah, see you real soon.
Soon.
All right, bye everybody. Thanks very much.